Two guild members angrily demand the guild master about the weapons, complaining they aren't as sharp as before and asking when the next batch will arrive. The guild master clenches his fist, blaming Sig for the problem, despite the tension. The young man carrying a wooden mallet smiles and urges to move on with the day's work, calmly agreeing to proceed. The young blacksmith hammers a glowing blade with fierce determination, his sweat falling as sparks fly. He vows to live his life freely, without being bound by anyone, forging his own path with every strike. Inside the S-rank guild Wings of Glory, a man named Sig urgently tells the guildmaster they can't keep up with the overwhelming number of orders. Pleading for reconsideration, the guildmaster responds dismissively, questioning if Sig is seriously whining. The guildmaster, Schmidt, sits casually, scolding Sig for complaining since adventurers risk their lives fighting monsters. While smiths only make things safely, Sig clenches a bag tightly, reflecting bitterly that despite working without sleep, it's always the same, and wonders if smiths are just lazy. The S-rank guild Wings of Glory has its own smithy, crafting weapons for members and outside commissions. Guildmaster Schmidt keeps accepting absurd numbers of requests, forcing impossible quotas on the blacksmiths. Despite everyone claiming they're at their limit, no one's being heard. Sig quietly agrees to somehow manage production this month, though he knows the cost. Sig stands before Schmidt and asks to forge a sword. Schmidt recalls Sig's condition when signing on as a blacksmith under the previous guildmaster, that he could forge swords using guild-owned materials. She sighs, reminding him of his desire to make swords. Schmidt questions the point of making unknown, flimsy, brittle weapons. She insists a blacksmith only needs to follow the request form. Sig argues that a sword tailored to the wielder can't be made by simply following forms. Schmidt dismisses it as a useless dream and urges him to drop it. Sig admits it's been a persistent dream despite everything, and Schmidt acknowledges his persistence. Sig declares this is his limit and announces he is leaving the guild. Schmidt reacts in shock, calling him insane for quitting an S-rank guild. Sig crushes a small object in his hand and throws down the contract, accusing Schmidt of breaking it first. Schmidt shouts that there are plenty of replacements for Sig and warns that when he regrets leaving, it will be too late. Sig silently closes the door behind him and surveys his cluttered, messy room, muttering, "Filthy." Sig reflects that this life without breathing room would have destroyed him sooner or later. He decides to pack his things into a magic bag and prepares to leave, stating the next stop is the workshop. He enters the busy workshop filled with smiths working. A fellow smith notices Sig's packed tools and asks if he's going on a trip. Sig explains he wanted to say goodbye, but most smiths are out on a major expedition. He apologizes to Torque and announces he is leaving the guild today. Torque panics, saying the quotas are already brutal and asks how they will manage without him. Sig calmly replies that there are plenty of replacements for him, leaving Torque speechless and shocked. A guild member asks about Keed's weapon, reminding Sig that he's the only one who can forge for her. Sig reflects silently on Keed's sword. The only one in the guild who truly cares about swords, even if it hurts. He refuses to leave the maintenance to anyone else, explaining that Keed won't let anyone but him touch her sword, or she'll cut him down. He smiles gently and pleads, "Please." The guild member, sweating nervously, tells Sig he's counting on him and urges him to pass on the message to the others not to push themselves past their limits. Sig quietly exits through a door. The word, "Sig," shouted after him. The scene shifts to a peaceful townscape. Alone outside, Sig contemplates his sudden resignation, admitting he quit in the heat of the moment and wonders what to do next. He considers joining another guild but notes he'd need approval to open his own forge. He recalls how he devoted himself to the guild all this time, but the end came so suddenly. Sig enters a cozy tavern and orders 2 rockbird drumsticks. The burly bartender recognizes him and asks what brings him to the valley. A young woman holding a large cleaver asks if Sig is known. Surprised by the super easy-to-use knife she wields, Sig smiles and confirms he sharpened it. The woman praises him as a damn good blacksmith. Sig hands over a coin and wishes her to enjoy her meal, receiving a grateful thanks in return. Sig enjoys his meal, noting how the fibers remain intact, preserving the juices. He feels satisfied knowing his work is appreciated. Suddenly, a warning shouts from afar, urging him to run because it's dangerous. He looks up, puzzled. A drunken man swings wildly, causing a commotion in public. A woman with long hair calls out, announcing they're from the Night Order and ordering people to clear the way to stop him. The woman points at Sig, commanding him to drop his weapon immediately and threatening to cut him down if he resists. Sig looks on as the drunken man charges at her. Mocking her, she swiftly raises her sword to defend herself. The woman blocks the drunken man's fierce attack, but Sig observes that despite her skill, she seems overwhelmed by the man's intense killing intent. The man prepares for another strike, clearly not accustomed to real combat. Sig senses danger as the clash of swords rings out sharply. He notes the woman uses her long sword not to cut but to bash, mismatching its weight and thickness. He realizes if she only defends, her sword won't hold against the brute's force. The man swings wildly, breaking the proud Scarlet family sword in two. Shock floods the woman as the blade falls apart, leaving her defenseless. The large man bellows, towering over the fallen woman. Sig rushes toward the chaos, while a bystander urgently tells a blacksmith to stop Sig. The tension rises as the crowd reacts in disbelief. Sig calmly steps forward, assuring the woman not to worry, that he'll handle the situation. The brute snarls, demanding to know who Sig is, but Sig remains composed, preparing to confront the threat. The large man swings his sword with brutal force, the motion cutting through the air as Sig watches silently. Nearby, a blacksmith and a young assistant exchange worried glances, sweat beading on the blacksmith's face as the broken wooden plank falls apart. Sig steps forward, sword drawn, and slashes decisively at the brute. The woman gasps in shock, her eyes wide as she watches Sig's swift attack. The brute stumbles back, caught off guard by the sudden strike. Onlookers murmur in disbelief, questioning the thin sword Sig wields. The sword gleams sharply, its slender blade contrasting with the long sword it just cleaved. The woman and the blacksmith watch in stunned silence as Sig stands firm, the sword held confidently. Sig calmly warns the brute that if he continues to rampage, the next one he cuts down will be him. The woman nods hesitantly, regaining her composure. The brute hesitates, eyeing Sig warily as the tension thickens around them. Soldiers shout to restrain the big man who has collapsed, breathing heavily. Sig calmly advises drinking in moderation while gripping his sword. A woman hurriedly introduces herself as Sia Scarlet of the Lusarka Third Night Order, thanking Sig for saving her. Sig assures her he's unharmed and brushes off the gratitude. Sia asks for Sig's name as her savior, but he declines, modestly saying he didn't do much. As Sig begins to leave, Sia calls after him, eager to ask more, but he waves goodbye and wishes her luck with her work. Sia walks away, pondering the man's identity. A blacksmith confirms the manager's earlier suspicion. The man is a skilled blacksmith, capable of cutting a sword in half with a single strike. The blacksmith reflects on the rarity of such skill. Sig stands alone, admiring his sword's craftsmanship. In a quiet forge, two blacksmiths discuss Sig, questioning what makes him so special. They note that swords are rarely used these days and wonder if someone else could take his place. A young woman questions how little is known about Sig, noting he handles all outside requests alone and rarely talks about himself. She reflects that Sig studies the wielder carefully, not just crafting swords or weapons but also knives and scissors. When he makes them, they become lifelong partners for their owners. Sig sits quietly by the forge, holding a tool, as the narration explains that to him. Smithing means facing the person who will use what he forges. He examines a sword, explaining it is a one-of-a-kind made just for him. Before forging it, he had to ensure it was usable. He admits it's been a while since he last swung a sword. The narration adds that swords are niche and brittle against impact, and even a long sword can be cut down depending on the wielder and blade. He holds the sword's hilt, stating he truly loves swords and wants to forge them and live by making them. Just like in the old days, the blade gleams beautifully, symbolizing the deep bond between sword and wielder. Sig is urged to imagine the sword's future wielder, whose hand will fit it, with what power and range it will be swung. A young Sig expresses his desire to forge a sword surpassing his father's at that place. He reflects that he forges tools to bring out the best in their wielders. The present Sig stands with the younger version behind him, affirming he will forge with who he is now. He describes the village as small, with clear water, a mine for materials, kind people, and no guild-imposed rules or customs. He resolves to keep going and decides to go home. The tale begins of a blacksmith who returned to the countryside, met many companions, and whose name would echo in legend. The story returns to the village of memories, showing a peaceful rural scene and Sig smiling warmly. A carriage will grinds to a halt as a young man announces their arrival to a customer. He smiles warmly, feeling nostalgic about returning to his birthplace after a long journey. After a month of transferring carriages from the trade city of Rusalka, he finally steps into the village of Forka. Approaching a modest house, he knocks and announces himself to the village chief. Barris, the old man opens the door, surprised and delighted to see him, noting how much he has grown. He invites him inside, clearly happy to reconnect after so long. Inside, the village chief exclaims in shock that the young man has quit. The visitor explains the guild's policies never suited him. Despite all his efforts, they kept piling on requests and never allowed him to forge blades freely. Outside, two women listen quietly, understanding the weight of his decision. The young man reveals his true desire, to craft blades that surpass his father's, believing this village is the best place to achieve that. The village chief admits the countryside may not bring fame or recognition, but the young man insists he only wants to smith to his heart's content. Living a life that allows that is enough for him. The village chief notes that the family home and workshop remain, asking if the young man would like to live there. The young man eagerly agrees. The chief mentions the village blacksmith is aging and asks if he could handle smithing for the villagers. The young man confidently promises to make knives, sickles, blades, and farming tools, assuring it will make everyone happy since he once worked in an S-rank guild. The chief reflects on how Sig, once only able to sharpen, has grown so reliable. Sig brushes off the praise. But the chief's words linger as Sig steps outside. He moves through the forest, sensing something still present in the village. Sig approaches the old family home, noticing its quiet solitude. He opens the door and steps inside the workshop, now covered in cobwebs and dust, taking in the familiar yet abandoned space. Inside, Sig smells the iron and coal, feeling a nostalgic connection despite the absence of his father's swords, which he acknowledges would be dangerous to keep. As he explores, he suddenly coughs from the poor ventilation and decides to check the living space, preparing to settle in and revive the old workshop. Sig steps into the old family home, noting the furniture remains exactly as it was. He recalls liking the place despite being scolded back then and prepares to clean. Marveling at how easily the dirt comes off with magic, gathering trash, he decides to put it outside for now. Outside, Sig encounters two wary girls who look remarkably alike, likely sisters. He introduces himself as Sig, returning after 15 years, and explains he has permission from Chief Barris. The girls remain cautious but listen. The older girl, Liliana, explains she and her younger sister Atura farm and hunt nearby. She mentions seeing Sig earlier at the chief's house and came to say hello. Sig listens attentively, understanding their lifestyle. Liliana reveals she is still learning to hunt, farming alongside their mother. Sig expresses amazement at their skills despite their youth. Noticing the tough cleaning work ahead, Liliana offers help, but Sig hesitates, concerned about their household chores. The girls insist, saying they are heading out today and want to assist. Sig casts a spell that gathers dust together, astonishing the girls. One offers to help despite the heavy load, but Sig insists he can manage alone. The older girl wonders if Sig might be an amazing person. The room sparkles clean as Sig announces the job is done. He thanks the girls and offers to make something for them. The younger girl asks what a blacksmith is, and Sig explains he makes weapons. Sig shows a sword to the younger girl, explaining a blacksmith makes weapons and tools. She marvels at its beauty, and Sig asks if she wants anything made. She hesitates but then responds with interest. The younger girl shyly requests matching kitchen knives for herself and her sister. Wanting to help her sibling, the older sister reacts with surprise, moved by the request. Sig listens as the older girl explains her sister struggles with the kitchen knife at home because it's made for adults. He admires her thoughtfulness but warns that knives are dangerous and using an adult knife would make it hard for her sister to use her strength. The younger girl questions if that means knives are not allowed. He smiles warmly, calling her thoughtful and offers to make matching kitchen knives as a gift. The older girl hesitates, worried 2 knives might be too much, but Sig insists and promises to deliver them tomorrow. Both girls bow deeply, overwhelmed with gratitude, then hurry outside together. Night falls as Sig stands alone in his room, exhausted from travel and cleaning. He contemplates resting but finds himself unconsciously setting up his tools on the table. Puzzled by his own actions, he examines the neatly arranged tools, feeling a strange compulsion. Holding his hammer, Sig reflects on his worn-out body and lack of sleep. Yet he can't resist the urge to smith. Memories of past joy in smithing flood back. Accepting his nature, he resolves to use the materials he brought, knowing every blacksmith has their own style. He explains that he uses magic to improve efficiency. Though some craftsmen dislike it, in the guild, time pressure made this indispensable and thanks to it, he's improved since he started. He heats the base metal to around 800 degrees, then applies boric acid, borax, and iron oxide before layering it with steel and reheating. Finally, he hammers the layers together to fuse them. Once the base and steel bond fully, he shapes the metal into a kitchen knife. He smiles with satisfaction as the knife is quenched in water. Sitting by the fire, he reflects that working on what he loves, free from deadlines, is true freedom. Wiping sweat from his brow, he continues his work by carefully applying materials to the blade. Though he's seen this process countless times, it never grows boring. The more he looks at the glowing forge, the more it draws him in. He decides now is the moment to proceed, igniting the fire anew and preparing to continue his craft with renewed focus. He picks up a knife and an orange, preparing to cut it. As he slices, The kitchen cabinets suddenly topple over with a loud crash. Shock floods his face as he stares at the chaos around him. Whispering, "What?" He clutches the knife tightly, sweat dripping down his face, admitting he messed up. He confesses he got completely absorbed in his work, which was dangerous, realizing he lost focus between fatigue and excitement. He decides the knife is too risky to hand over as is. Sitting by the forge, he plans to craft it carefully, noting that Atora's hand size seems stronger than other kids her age, prioritizing safety. He resolves to add a sheath. Elsewhere, 3 men discuss the guild's declining pay for cheap weapons and lodging. One points out that adventurers risk their lives, so the guild needs to improve. The man with the knife clenches it firmly, determined. The scene ends with a woman overwhelmed by paperwork, while the man reflects that the guild must get its act together, bit by bit. Sig knocks on a door, holding a wrapped package. A woman with long, wavy hair and a warm smile opens it, asking if he is Sig, the blacksmith. He confirms quietly as she welcomes him inside. He introduces himself properly, and the woman, Cynthia, reveals she is the mother of Liliana and Atra. She mentions her daughters have been very excited about the kitchen knives he's making for them. Sig admits he's already finished the knives. Cynthia is surprised that only one night has passed and the knives are already done. Sig confirms this as Cynthia and a young girl enter the room. Calling out to him, Cynthia explains she brought the knives over and asks if he could try using them for a bit. Liliana and Atra eagerly accept the knives, expressing their delight. Cynthia thanks Sig warmly. Liliana marvels at the craftsmanship, especially the sheath, while both girls hold their knives with a mix of excitement and awe. Sig notices no reaction and wonders if they didn't like the knives. Liliana quickly denies it, explaining the blades were so beautiful she couldn't look away. Cynthia admits she's never seen such beautiful knives before. Liliana eagerly asks her mother if she can try cutting something, and Cynthia suggests slicing a radish. Liliana concentrates as she tries cutting, but Sig warns her she's using too much force. The cutting board creaks under the pressure, and Cynthia is surprised. Sig gently advises her to just use the weight of her hand next time and checks if she's hurt. She and Cynthia marvel at the knives' clean cuts and perfect fit. Sig explains he dulled the sharpness as much as possible but asks how they feel. He recalls their handshake when they first met, hinting that was when he took measurements. Sig reveals he can read a person's dominant hand, size, shape, bone structure, and muscle build just by boxing their hand. He uses this information to create the most suitable knives for each client. Liliana is amazed and thanks Sig warmly for the wonderful knives. The young girl beams with joy, clutching the knife tightly as she promises to treasure it. The craftsman smiles softly, reflecting that hearing praise like, "It's good," right before his eyes can save a craftsman's heart. Nearby, the mother and 2 daughters share a warm moment together. Memories flash back to the guild where requests were once received by another department before being passed down to the workshop. The craftsman thinks about how if he could see the user's face, he would understand exactly what they wanted and how to make it. Scenes of forging and crafting fill his mind, and he realizes why he enjoyed the work so much. The craftsman reflects on how, as he became more famous, his time with clients decreased, and eventually forging blades was forbidden. He admits his heart may have dried up from mass-producing for faceless customers just to meet quotas. A concerned woman asks if something is wrong, and he quietly responds that he's just happy. With renewed resolve, he declares that if his tools make people happy, there's nothing better. That's the true reward of a craftsman. He wants to stay involved with the people who use his tools and create while staying close to them. The woman, impressed, asks if she may request something to be made, while the younger girl admires the craftsman, thinking how cool he is. The girl urgently calls out arrowheads, as she explains her father was a skilled hunter who taught her, but he passed away from illness. She admits her efforts to be like him haven't gone well, but if Sig made the arrowheads, it might change everything. She asks to see the bow and arrows he uses, requesting 1 arrow as a sample. Sig hands her an arrow with a smile, then asks Liliana if she could shoot once outside for him. Liliana shoots an arrow into a tree, hitting the target but unable to finish the prey due to her weak strength. Sig praises her skill and wonders if the knife he forged, which cuts well with little force, could inspire making lighter arrows without losing penetration power. Sig agrees to start immediately and asks them to return around noon. He prepares in his workshop, determined to increase penetration power while maintaining durability. Confident this is where he can prove his skill. Sig sharpens a knife carefully at his workbench, then hammers a piece of wood with force. He holds up a newly crafted arrow, admiring its quality and asks if it isn't well made. A tray of perfectly made arrowheads lies nearby, wiping sweat. He grabs a tool and heads out the door, ready to continue. Outside, Sig stretches his arms wide, savoring the cool breeze that greets him after leaving the hot forge. He breathes in deeply, appreciating the natural wind cooling his heated body. calling it true luxury. Suddenly, he sneezes and reminds himself to be careful not to cool off too much. Back inside, Sig shows Liliana the new arrowheads, explaining he made them lighter than before but still needs to test if they retain their penetration power. Liliana marvels at their beauty. He attaches one arrow to her bow and instructs her to shoot at a tree in the backyard. Liliana draws her bow with intense focus and releases the arrow. It strikes the tree with a powerful impact, shattering the bark and sending splinters flying, proving the arrow's strength despite its lighter weight. Liliana gasps in awe at the arrow piercing straight through the tree in the back. Sig asks how it is, and she marvels at its incredible strength, laughing. She insists it's nothing special since her colleagues could make similar pieces. Sig admits the village's blacksmiths are quite old, as Barris mentioned, and suggests once he's used to it, he might start taking requests. The village square bustles with people despite no proper blacksmithing area being set up yet. Sig wonders if this is overdoing it. While villagers discuss making the space more spacious to attract crowds, an elder proposes returning to the old way, bringing all smithing tools to the central square, which Sig agrees would be appreciated. Inside a quiet room, the elder promises to spread the word about a skilled blacksmith coming to the central square and asks Sig not to feel pressured. A young boy approaches, asking if the skilled blacksmith the village chief mentioned is the elder. Sig modestly says he doesn't know if he's skilled but will handle repairing and sharpening tools and farm implements. The boy examines an axe, noting Sig's spaced-out look and hesitating to trust him with it. Sig jokes it looks like the boy's father's axe. The boy acknowledges Sig's sharp eye and offers to leave the sharpening to him. Agreeing on a payment of 30 silver coins, Sig thanks him, ready to take on the task. The boy warns he'll haggle the price if he's not satisfied, to which Sig calmly agrees. The boy is startled by the grinding noise as Sig operates a magical sharpening tool. Explaining it will be loud, the boy watches in awe as Sig sharpens an axe with the device. The boy nervously asks if Sig is sure about grinding so aggressively, but Sig confidently says yes. The crowd gathers, watching intently as sparks fly. Sig explains the blade's thickness means shaving off a little won't be a problem. The villagers exchange doubtful glances. Suspecting Sig is being tested as the blacksmith who fled to the countryside, Sig remains focused on his work. Sig finishes sharpening the axe and asks the boy how it looks. The boy is amazed, praising how polished the axe is and excitedly asks to try it. Surprised by how well it cuts, Sig grins and asks if that means the boy acknowledges his skill, while the boy happily admits no one could doubt it now. A crowd of villagers eagerly calls out, asking Sig to sharpen their axes and knives too. Sig smiles warmly, telling them to line up in order. He reflects that all these tools have been well used and cared for, making this truly rewarding work. A man with long hair and a cape welcomes a visitor inside a lavish room, introducing himself as Schmidt, the guild master of the Wings of Glory. He thanks the visitor for coming and gestures warmly as he speaks. Schmidt asks what brings the visitor here today. The visitor, Lady Sia of the Third Knights of Rusalka, sits composed and serious. She says she heard this was a wonderful guild and expresses honor at being here. Schmidt smiles brightly, acknowledging the guild's reputation for excellent adventurers and mentions someone she wishes to meet. He reveals the person she seeks. A blacksmith capable of forging blades, a man named Sig. The scene shifts to Sig outside, surrounded by villagers eagerly watching him work. The text notes that Sig has already left, implying his reputation precedes him. A man stands confidently in a kitchen, wearing a black shirt and apron, admiring a large, glistening slab of meat on the counter. He reflects that no matter what, meat always tastes good. A determined woman with long hair grips a sword tightly, sweat dripping down her face. She recalls the day someone broke her sword with a single strike, fueling her growing craving every time she swings a sword. Flashbacks show a man breaking her sword and her shocked reaction. The woman continues her inner monologue, expressing her deep desire for that sword. Since she was 6, she is trained rigorously in swordsmanship, drilling it into her body, knowing she should desire no weapon but a sword. Despite this, she couldn't suppress the urge to wield that sword, so she came here. In a lavish room, a woman with long hair sits calmly, listening as another woman informs her that Sig retired from the guild about 2 weeks ago. The visitor reflects that even for something as niche as swordsmithing, few smiths match Sig's skill. She senses Sig's extraordinary love for swords as the other woman assures her that crafting items beyond expectations is possible, but that meeting Sig won't be necessary. A woman with long hair asks if there is truly any smith who can forge a sword more splendid than Sig. She clenches her fists in frustration, kicking a chair as she reflects that everyone is so obsessed with swords. A man stands outside a forge, announcing the sword is ready. He crouches and prepares to retrieve it, noting how the cooling speed of the blade differs depending on the soil used, creating the blade's shrinking sound. which swordsmiths call the sword's first cry. He admires the refined expression of the blade. The man wipes sweat from his brow, relieved. He polishes the blade carefully, explaining that using rough, medium, and finishing whetstones in order reveals beautiful hamon blade patterns. He admits it's been 2 years since he could forge a sword with such care, acknowledging that his days in the guild have leveled him up, but he is still nowhere near his father's skill. The man, now dressed in traditional attire, draws a sheathed sword as he stands in a room filled with blooming spider lilies. His expression is tense and focused, sweat dripping down his face as he faces an unseen challenge. He wonders how his father reached such a masterful level. Sitting alone in the forge as the fire burns steadily, sweat drips down his face, but a determined smile forms as he admits this is why he can never quit swordsmithing. Relaxing in a rare bath at the village house, he lets the dirt and fatigue melt away, recalling how at the guild he could only rinse with water, always pressured by quotas, never able to truly relax. 1 hour earlier, 2 girls confront him, noting he's covered in soot. He apologizes and explains he'd been holed up in the workshop for about 5 days, then accepts a gift of rock boar meat from them. Grateful for the meat, he thanks them as one girl excitedly shares how their arrowheads helped bring down a monster. He prepares the meat by poking holes and rubbing in salt and pepper, deciding to let it cure for 3 days to achieve supreme flavor. The next morning, a girl greets him cheerfully as he dons his hunting gear for the first time. She asks if he's off to hunt, and he replies it suits her well. He nervously asks how the meat turned out, causing the girl to blush in surprise. He explains he hasn't eaten the meat yet because he's going to smoke it, not just preserve it. She questions if smoking counts as preserved food, but he insists smoked meat is delicious and a deep cuisine with varied flavors depending on chips and temperature. He tells her to watch as he prepares to start smoking it now. He reveals a large homemade smoker and explains how to use it. Light the hickory chips, hang the meat inside after removing moisture, and wait 5 hours. She notes the smell is already delicious, and he confirms the process. 5 hours later, she grows impatient while he opens the smoker. The meat has turned a beautiful brown and looks shiny and delicious. He instructs her to hang it to dry for 2 more days before it's ready, surprising her that it's not finished yet. 2 days later, she calls out to him excitedly as he arrives with the smoked meat. He says it's finally done and ready to eat. She wants to share it with everyone but notes Cynthia is helping at another farm. They decide to eat it together for now and bring some to Cynthia as a souvenir, hoping to gain more believers in smoking food. The smoked meat is finally ready. It's surface brown and firm with a refined smoky aroma that delights the 2 girls holding it. The man assures them it looks delicious and explains that with the seasoning already in, no extra additions are needed. Just cook it simply. He presents the finished smoked rock boar belly steak, which gleams invitingly. The girls inhale deeply, enchanted by the smell and appearance. They gather around a table outdoors, sparkling with anticipation as they prepare to eat. The man savors the first bite, praising the pure bliss of the hickory smoke blending perfectly with the meat's aroma. His expression brightens as the fragrance fills his nose and the rich umami floods his mouth. The close-up of the steak reveals its juicy texture, the sweet fat and deep flavor melting on the tongue as wild juices gush forth with each bite. The girls exclaim how delicious it is, noting the perfect doneness. Crispy outside, tender inside, one girl marvels that smoking has made the same meat so much more delicious, not just preserved it. The man nods, pleased by their enjoyment. The trio continues eating happily, the girl admitting she can't stop. The peaceful outdoor setting fades into a nostalgic scene of smoked meat paired with alcohol, recalling how heavenly it was after long days of hard work. The moment captures the simple joy and comfort found in sharing this carefully prepared meal. The young man cheerfully declares the smoked meat irresistible as the girls eagerly ask for seconds. He promises to cook more, but Liliana gently questions what he plans to do with all he's made. He admits he hadn't considered that, explaining he thought forging swords was enough, but now that he's left the guild, he wonders how his work will be judged. The girls invite him to join them at the market in Unbelt, suggesting even his smoked meat would sell well. Surprised, he recalls Unbelt as a small town, but the girls explain it's grown into the region's busiest town over the past 15 years. They reveal their plan to leave the village soon and invite him to come along. Hoping he'll make and sell what he loves, he agrees to count on them. The girls express concern about monsters along the way, but he assures them he can handle himself as a swordsman. Though warns not to rely on him too much, they feel reassured by his presence and promise to inform their mother. The young man accepts their thanks with a smile. 2 days later, Sig greets the girls with a cheerful good morning. They immediately ask where his luggage is. Surprised to see he has none, Sig reveals a small pouch at his waist, explaining it's a magic bag that can even carry the entire cart beside them. The girls react with astonishment as the cart lifts off the ground, defying expectations. Sig snaps his fingers, and the cart floats effortlessly behind him. He smiles warmly, remarking how pulling a cart now feels like a picnic after so long away from unbelt. The girls express surprise at how easy it seems. Sig declares they're ready to go, but a low growl emerges from the nearby bushes, hinting at danger lurking ahead. As the group leaves the village behind, two figures wave farewell from a distance. The young man warns everyone to proceed with caution from this point onward. He explains that unlike the safer road they traveled before, the forest ahead holds a fair chance of monster encounters, so they must stay sharp. The others agree, acknowledging the warning. The companions remark how thanks to the young man, traveling through the forest feels easier without the usual burden of pushing a wagon. Yet he admits this ease makes him feel like lowering his guard, a dangerous thought. He reflects that their trust in him and Liliana is a responsibility he must not betray. Suddenly alert, the young man senses danger and informs the group of a monster ahead. He volunteers to scout ahead while instructing Liliana to watch over the others. They respond affirmatively, preparing for what lies ahead. He moves stealthily into the shadows, readying himself for confrontation. The monster reveals itself as a pack of 4 green wolves, their flowing manes giving them a mystical appearance. The young man notes one wolf blocks their path but has yet to notice them. He contemplates retreating to devise a plan rather than rushing in blindly. Lady Sia resolves to slay the green wolf threatening the village, noting that defeating it would bring great benefit. She acknowledges that Sig is with them today. Boosting their chances, she instructs Atra and their mother to stay hidden, pledging to live up to expectations. Cynthia urges caution as the group prepares. The pack of green wolves remains unaware of their presence. Lady Sia declares she will launch a preemptive strike and hands the first shot to the young man. Both hide in the bushes, ready to act. Lady Sia releases her arrow with precision, striking the wolf with a sharp, swift attack. The young man quickly prepares his weapon, impressed by the arrow's incredible sharpness. The wolves react to the sudden assault, startled and wounded. The wolf snarls fiercely, narrowly missing the young man as he dodges. Lady Sia readies another arrow, eyes sharp and focused. The wolf is struck down decisively, collapsing from the combined attack. The young man praises the success, acknowledging the skill behind the strike. The young man praises the archer's skill, impressed by her quick judgment, arrow accuracy, and composure before monsters. She credits his specially made arrowheads for her improved aim and ability to finish kills. He asks if she maintains her weapons carefully, explaining that proper maintenance prevents rust and sharpness decline after battle. She listens intently, absorbing the importance of upkeep. The archer confirms she still uses the same arrows because discarding them after one use would be too costly. Since the young man crafted them, she treasures each one. She carefully cleans an arrow, showing her respect for his craftsmanship. The young man recalls how many bow users discard arrows after one use, relying on blacksmiths to forge new ones. But he prefers making things for people he knows personally. He offers to fix any bent arrows immediately if told. Showing his dedication, the archer smiles warmly at his sincerity. He tells Liliana she is the first customer of his workshop. Expressing gratitude and trust, she beams with joy, thanking him and promising to count on him when the time comes. He reflects that in this frontier, he may have finally found the free smithing he was searching for. Hunger prompts a suggestion to rest nearby, which is agreed upon. They settle down as 2 girls reveal spring vegetable sandwiches. Looking delicious, one invites Sig to join them. Surprising him, he decides to cook lunch on the spot. Sig carries a pot, explaining he made smoked sandwiches for them as thanks. He describes the simple smoking method using a clay pot, hickory chips, a net, slime sheet, and cheese. Despite plans to unbelt soon, he assures it won't take long, just a quick smoke. A dozen minutes later, the sandwiches finish smoking with perfect color. 3 people prepare the sandwiches eagerly. The smoked sandwiches are complete, shining with freshness. They all prepare to eat, admiring the thick, buttery bread filled with spring veggies, boiled egg, and mashed potatoes seasoned just right. Sig tries the sandwich first, praising the high-quality look and taste. One woman notes the smoked ones are delicious too, while the other marvels at the rich cheese flavor and wonderful smoked aroma. Sig savors the smoked sandwich, noting how the smoky sweetness mellows the cheese's saltiness. He smiles, declaring it just about perfect as the group relaxes together on logs in the clearing. Liliana points excitedly as Sig notices Unbelt's outer wall from their vantage point. He recalls it wasn't nearly this developed before. While a wide view reveals the fortified city inside the circular wall, guards stand alert at the gate. At the checkpoint, a stern guard questions Sig about the magic bag he carries, suspicious of smuggling. Sig explains honestly that he's a blacksmith selling blades and kitchen knives he forged. thanking the guard for transporting the packages. The guard asks to see the sword at Sig's hip, admiring its beauty and confirming it as a katana. Sig confirms he's trading at the free market today. The guard jokes about the price, and Sig politely declines, ready to proceed. A bald man in armor promises to stop by if timing allows, wanting to see more of Sig's work. Sig notes the man doesn't seem the flattering type but replies he'll be waiting. The bustling city streets impress Sig. So different from before, he heads toward the free market, sword at his side. At the lively market, Sig spots other smiths and decides on a spot to set up. He pays a silver coin for a stall and prepares his knives and goods, declaring everything ready to start selling. Evening falls and Sig sits behind his stall. Disappointed by the lack of customers, he wonders if selling without guild backing was reckless and thinks it's time to meet Liliana and the others. The armored man returns, asking if Sig still has stock left and how sales are going. Sig admits he still has plenty of unsold goods. The man expresses disbelief that Sig hasn't sold despite his skill. Sig laughs it off, saying he's not that great. But the man insists his eyes can't be fooled. Sig recalls the blade at his waist, noting its refined beauty meant solely for battle. The swords and daggers laid out are stunningly beautiful, evoking vivid images of battle unlike anything seen before. The armored man guesses the smith must be renowned or an apprentice, or perhaps an exclusive smith for an organization. The young smith smiles, pleased to hear such praise from a warrior. They shake hands, the smith introducing himself as Garland and telling the man to drop formalities. Garland asks if anything in the stall catches his eye, admitting he can't wield a sword and requesting to see the daggers instead. The man agrees readily. The armored man inspects a dagger and declares it excellent, deciding to buy one. Garland reveals the price is 40 silver coins, which the man finds surprisingly cheap. Garland explains it's a starter price, and the man quickly adds another dagger to his purchase before the price rises. The man then questions why Garland sells smoked goods alongside weapons, to which Garland replies it's just a hobby. The man laughs heartily, calling Garland strange but decides to buy some smoked goods as well. Garland offers a taste, which the man tries and is immediately astonished, exclaiming how amazing it is and questioning what it is. His shock is clear as he reacts with wide eyes and a stunned expression. The man declares he will buy everything and orders the smith to supply his shop with the goods. Surprised, the smith asks if it's the man's own shop. The man proudly reveals he owns the most popular food store in town and trusts his palate. The smith laughs, realizing his smoked goods are selling better than his blades, and predicts big sales. The scene shifts to a nighttime cityscape with a towering castle wall. A figure in a cloak wields a sword with swift, powerful strikes. He hopes the right people who need swords will find him as he fights on the 27th floor of a dungeon. The sword wielder, Lady Keed, impresses onlookers with her skill. With a single strike from her thin blade, she manages to chip her opponent's sword. The chipped sword is shown in detail, while shocked spectators react to her prowess. Lady Keed urgently informs a man named Sig that her sword has chipped. She recognizes him as a true sword user and insists she must quickly go to him for help, emphasizing the seriousness of her weapon's damage. The shopkeeper bought almost all of the smoked goods, and the man reflects that must be it for today. Nearby, two adventurers, Sora and Thor, spot a weapon stall. Sora excitedly urges Thor to check it out, but Thor protests wanting to see weapons in a normal shop. Sora insists hidden gems are found in places like this, while Thor is judged as a rookie adventurer by his gear, possibly younger than Liliana. A third voice sighs, lamenting Thor's bad habit again. Sora eagerly asks the old man if the long blade is a sword, and the man offers a katana, inviting Sora to try drawing it. Sora blushes in awe as the katana gleams brilliantly in his hand, captivated by its beauty. Sora, still dazzled, wonders if the katana is not interesting to look at, but quickly corrects himself, marveling at how amazing it is. He feels as if he can see sparkling stars in the blade, admitting he has never seen anything like it before. The man smiles, surprised by Sora's reaction, while Sora admits he can't believe it. The woman questions if Thor can even tell if the sword is any good, reminding him he bought a fake last time. Sora insists this time it's a genuine, high-quality weapon, despite the woman's shock at the price of 200 gold coins for such a thin sword. Sora confidently declares he wants the katana. The katana is forged from a rare material called tamahagane, requiring decades of skill to craft, explaining its high price, despite Thor's protests about the cost being too steep even with all his savings. The others remind him not to get cocky just because he's one rank above. Both bow apologetically, while Thor tries to reassure them that judging quality properly is important. Sig reflects on how seeing young adventurers like Thor reminds him of his own early days at the guild and encourages him. He suggests Thor might afford a tanto, a smaller blade, which excites Thor, who eagerly asks to see it. Sig warns him not to try cutting on the table, or he'll slice the whole stall in two. Thor kneels and carefully slices a wooden log with the dagger, impressing everyone. The others are shocked at his skill, but Thor admits it's not his own. Sora praises the dagger's quality, noting its price of 30 silver coins, but worries he barely has enough money. Sig explains he gave Thor a big discount because Thor was the only one who noticed the blade's quality and wanted it badly. Thor beams with pride, holding his new weapon and promising to get stronger with it. Suddenly, they realize they need to hurry to the Southgate Plaza, and Thor thanks Sig as they rush off. Two figures dash forward, their cloaks billowing behind them. A young man smiles softly, reflecting that youth is a wonderful thing. A woman calls out, praising Sig's work and asking how it went. Sig explains that besides Garland, the gatekeeper from earlier, only one adventurer bought a tanto. He admits he actually sold more smoked goods, which surprises the woman. She laughs at the odd combination but praises the idea, saying Sig's smoked food is delicious and might attract more fans like them. The woman excitedly reports they sold everything, even at a higher price than usual. Sig is surprised but learns it's thanks to preserving the goods in his magic bag. Keeping their freshness, the woman beams happily, and a child calls to her mother, inviting her to walk around unbelt. The woman agrees they finished work early and suggests shopping before heading back. The child cheers, eager to get something to eat. Sig happily accepts the offer to be shown around unbelt, smiling warmly as they prepare to explore the town together. A woman asks Sig if there's anything he wants to buy. She mentions she's running low on seasonings and wants to restock, then asks about materials for forging. Sig says he still has plenty in his magic bag, so he's good. The woman excitedly offers to introduce him to a shop where materials are cheap as they walk through a bustling market street. They approach a vendor, greeted by an older man who asks what they're looking to buy. The woman explains Sig wants to look at seasonings. Sig politely introduces himself and asks to see the salt. The vendor shows a sack of salt, and Sig examines it closely. Sig requests 5 kilos each of salt and pepper, surprising the woman with the quantity. She notes the quality is rare and that she needs a lot for smoking. The vendor offers wood chips for smoking, and Sig asks about the types of grapevines available. The vendor shows bundles of oak, apple, walnut, and grapevine wood. He explains the soft vines burn quickly and are suited for adding flavor fast or for cold smoking. The vendor acknowledges Sig's knowledge of smoking, impressed by how much he knows. Sig offers to try some leftover smoked food, and the vendor agrees, handing him a small piece to taste. The merchant's eyes widen in surprise as he tastes the smoked rock boar meat. He exclaims in amazement at the perfect smoky aroma and concentrated umami flavor. Overwhelmed, he demands more, acknowledging that smoked goods truly sell better. Sig agrees to add 20 more pieces to the order, asking the cost to be deducted from his total. The merchant gratefully accepts the payment, calling Sig a lifesaver. Sig thanks the woman for introducing him to such a good merchant, who beams with happiness. She admits she never would have found the place without Liliana and the others. Later, a young girl quietly admits she's hungry. Sig apologizes for taking a detour but suggests trying some skewered croquettes. The group agrees and Sig orders 4. He reflects nostalgically that this is the same food his father and he enjoyed when they came to Unbelt for business. A woman tells Sig he doesn't have to pay, explaining it's their way of thanking him for keeping the crops fresh in his magic bag. Sig gratefully accepts the gift, and the girls happily eat the fluffy potatoes, praising their deliciousness. They all share a warm moment together, enjoying the food and each other's company. Sora takes a bite of a steaming skewer and finds it delicious. He recalls how his father used to buy him one at the end of each day. Even though the simple food costs less than a copper coin, this humble treat adds warmth and color to his memories with his father, shared now with the girls around him. As they enjoy their meal, Sora reflects on how happiness deepens and grows richer here with his companions. With their bellies full, he suggests they head back to the village, and the girls eagerly agree. Sora carries one of the girls on his back as they walk together with the others, sharing a quiet, tender moment. The warmth of their closeness brings a gentle smile to his face. Suddenly, a striking woman in traditional attire enters the guild hall, declaring she has crossed the sea from the far east on a warrior's pilgrimage. Her sharp gaze reveals she has no interest in the weak, only in what truly matters. With a commanding presence, she boldly challenges someone inside the hall. Lady Keed approaches the smithy, asking Mr. Torque for a moment and inquiring about Master Sig's whereabouts to request a katana repair. The smiths reveal Sig quit the Wings of Glory 2 weeks ago, shocking her. She demands to know why Master Sig quit, pressing the smith nervously as she decides to visit the guild master herself. With determination, she leaves the smithy to seek answers. In the guild master's office, Lady Keed reports her visit and requests a detailed explanation for Sig's departure. The guild master explains Sig was a selfish blacksmith who insisted on making minor items like katanas. angering Schmidt by refusing to do basic work. Leading to his quitting, Lady Keed challenges Schmidt's failure to retain such a skilled blacksmith and his disrespect toward katanas. Lady Keed questions who will maintain her katana now, emphasizing the unique skill required for katana care. Unlike kingdom swords, she accuses Schmidt of not understanding the importance of proper maintenance tools and weapons, underscoring that not just any blacksmith can handle a katana's upkeep. She declares her intention to find Master Sig, but is abruptly told she can't go because she has a nomination request from the feudal lord. Without hesitation, she accepts the order, promising to complete the request immediately. Determined, she resolves to finish the nomination request quickly so she can rush to Master Sig's side as soon as possible. Thor stands in his workshop surveying the tools and weapons laid out before him. He notes that while he sold 3 daggers, not a single piece of farm equipment was bought. Reflecting, he realizes that over the last 15 years, the frontier's development has shifted demand from farming tools to weapons. His expression hardens as he contemplates this change. Looking out over the town, Thor acknowledges that people come to unbelt from other villages, and demand for weapons exists, but his skills haven't yet become known. He decides it's too soon to judge after just one sale. Resolving to prepare for the next sale, he plans to make more daggers and arrowheads, which were popular with Liliana, and then move on to other items. Thor focuses intensely on his work, spreading out plans on the table. He vows to craft weapons familiar to the townspeople to prove his capabilities. He carefully sketches designs, hoping that if someone from the town takes interest in his swords, it will open new opportunities. Day after day, Thor tirelessly forges weapons in his workshop. There are no deadlines or troublesome interpersonal conflicts, allowing him to concentrate fully. Sweat drips down his face as his mind clears with each strike. After a solid week of relentless work, he begins to feel the results of his efforts, a quiet satisfaction growing within him. 1 week later, he wipes his hands and takes a deep breath. Stepping outside the workshop, the warmth of the season catches him by surprise, and he admits losing track of time going back and forth between home and work. Stretching on the porch, he decides to take a break and go for a walk. As he walks through a field, he spots 2 girls and calls out to them. They recognize him and ask if he's been cooped up in his workshop again. He explains he's been busy making things to sell at the next open-air market. The woman urges him to come out more often, worried he might collapse from overwork. She asks if the girls are busy with farm work, and they confirm they're pulling weeds, explaining the large field requires a lot of effort. He laughs and agrees it's a nice change of pace. The girls show him the vast field they manage, and one of them invites him to help. He smiles warmly, putting on gloves, ready to join them in the work. He reflects on how long it's been since he last did farm work, recalling it was just a little when he was a kid after his mother passed away. The memory brings a gentle smile as he pulls weeds alongside the girls. One girl apologizes, but he insists he's old now and it doesn't bother him. He admits wanting to farm again but lacks the time to do it alone. She suggests he partner with them for farming. She explains they'll manage most of the fields, and he only needs to help when he has free time. This arrangement is common among farmers, especially needing extra hands during harvest and help clearing land. He asks what's in it for her. She says having a man around is a big help and asks if he could escort them to unbelt again like before, which would be a huge relief. His eyes light up, calling it a dream come true, and he gladly agrees to join them. The girls cheer happily, excited to work with him. 3 days later, a girl calls out to Sig, asking if he has any free mornings to help farm. She explains they need him for the harvest, specifically to gather the spring cabbage. Sig wonders what exactly they'll be doing, and she insists it's time to harvest. He admits he'll only be able to help occasionally but looks forward to working with them. Sig and the girls greet each other cheerfully in the morning, full of energy. They express excitement about the upcoming harvest, eager to taste the joy of it soon. One girl mentions she's used to waking up early and suggests they head to the field where they'll be harvesting. He asks if the vast field before them is all spring cabbage. The girl confirms and points out that the field nearby belongs to them as well. Sig internally worries he might have made a huge mistake partnering with them for farming, overwhelmed by the scale. The morning dew sparkles like jewels on the magnificent, crisp cabbage leaves. Sig and the girl explain how to tell if a cabbage is ready to be harvested by pressing on a head with the hand. Ideally firm but with some give, Sig contemplates the tender inside of the cabbage, amazed by its beauty and freshness. Sig reflects that the cabbage must be neither too hard nor too soft, comparing its firmness to iron. He watches as the girl demonstrates how to harvest. Tilt the cabbage head, push the outer leaves aside, and cut at the base with a knife. Eager, Sig asks if the core is inside and prepares to try it himself. Following her advice to cut a little lower at the bottom, Sig slices through the cabbage and proudly holds it up, amazed by its size. The girls praise him as a natural and commend his first attempt as impressive. The The scene shifts to the girls expertly harvesting cabbages with swift, practiced motions. Sig watches in awe, impressed by their skill. One girl playfully asks if she's a good teacher, and Sig acknowledges their amazing speed. Exhausted but satisfied, Sig sits down, noting the pleasant sense of accomplishment as noon arrives. The girl asks him to store the harvested cabbages in his magic bag, which he agrees to, making the task easier and keeping them fresh. As she tosses cabbages to him, he catches them smoothly, continuing the work together. Sig marvels at how convenient it is to store the fresh cabbages in his magic bag. Catching them as they're tossed to him with ease, he hesitates, feeling a bit guilty about taking so many. But the girls assure him it's his rightful payment for helping. Grateful, he promises to assist more actively from now on. Invited to stay for lunch, Sig follows a woman who presents a feast centered on freshly picked spring cabbage. The spread looks impressive, and everyone gathers around the table to enjoy the meal together. Sig bites into a salad made from the spring cabbage, amazed by its crispness and sweetness, far beyond his expectations. The girl explains that the cabbage has tender leaves and a strong sweetness, making the dish exceptional. He feels his body rejoice at the fresh ingredients. As Sig continues eating the delicious meal, savoring the flavors of the cabbage and other vegetables simmered together, the girls watch him warmly. One asks if he plans to return to Unbelt soon, and Sig replies he's thinking of heading there in about 2 days. A voice asks if he wants to come along, and he eagerly agrees. He worries that if he delays, Thor and Garland might forget about him. The scene shifts to a group gathered near a wagon loaded with supplies, ready to depart. He reflects that a round trip will take at least 6 hours, so he must find a faster way to travel. Approaching a large castle gate, he asks a guard if Garland is present. The guard informs him Garland is out patrolling the city and allows him to pass through. He thanks the guard and notes that the guards of the East Street are about to open the area. Walking through a lively town, he waves to the 2 women ahead. He arrives at a stall displaying knives and contemplates that changing his spot too often would confuse customers. Noticing a line forming, he nervously asks if they are all waiting for his shop, embarrassed that the queue might be for the neighboring stall instead. A group of people eagerly tells him they've been waiting for him to open his shop. He turns to see a long line of customers stretching through the street, and his eyes widen in shock. Sweat beads on his face as he wonders why so many people have gathered, overwhelmed by the unexpected crowd. A crowd gathers, telling him they've been waiting for his shop to open. He confirms this and wonders if Thor or Garland spread the word. Smiling, he promises to open shortly and invites them to look at his knives. Inside, he announces he has short and long swords in addition to daggers, but the customer interrupts, demanding rockboar jerky. He offers smoked jerky for 8 silver coins per jar, but when asked about his work, he admits he only has smoked goods this time. The customer orders 2 packs of smoked jerky and smoked powder, surprising him again with his focus on smoked items. Another customer requests smoked bacon, and the merchant welcomes him warmly. The man eagerly praises the legendary smoked meat. The man marvels at the deep savory flavor spreading as he chews, asking what the legendary smoked goods are. The merchant explains they are sold at the free market and that the customers in line are gourmets from Unbelt. The merchant introduces himself as a traveling merchant dealing only in the finest foods, as the crowd continues to wait eagerly. A bustling crowd eagerly demands the legendary smoked goods, with one customer ordering smoked nuts by the jar. The merchant clarifies that his shop is a blacksmith's, not a smokehouse. Yet the smoked items sell out completely while no swords are bought. Despite decent sales from the smoked goods, the merchant sits alone, unable to feel happy about it. When asked if he's out of smoked goods, he admits they are sold out but insists that wasn't his real purpose for coming. A mysterious man with long earrings appears, greeting the merchant warmly. The sudden presence startles the merchant, who nervously welcomes him. The visitor reveals he is the first customer not interested in smoked goods and asks to see the swords. He explains he is from the Far East and knows about katanas, prompting the merchant to prepare for a different kind of transaction. A hand passes a sheathed katana to the man, who quietly says thanks. He exhales deeply, holding the sword with reverence. His eyes narrow with resolve as he reflects that the sword makes him straighten his back. The man senses someone from his homeland scrutinizing his sword, feeling as if he is being tested. His gaze sharpens, aware of the weight behind this silent appraisal. A flashback unfolds. A figure clad in traditional attire draws a katana with a swift, precise motion in a forested area. The man shivers, recalling the moment vividly. Back in the present, the man smiles subtly, inspecting the blade closely. He explains he had heard of a smith making katanas here and decided to stake out the place, confident it was the right choice. He asks if the other is satisfied with how the sword turned out, brushing the blade with care. The man admits he never expected a katana made by someone from the kingdom to rival those from the Far East. But this sword has completely blown him away. He carefully handles the blade, impressed by its quality, calling it a top-tier piece rarely seen even in the Far East. The other man responds simply with, "I see," prompting a frustrated question about whether he truly understands how incredible the sword is. The man confesses he's hardly ever seen a katana from the Far East and is unsure if he's truly seen one. Despite training there, he reveals he was taught by his father and is forging swords with the goal of reaching his father's level. The other asks if his father was from the Far East, and he confirms this. The man explains his father was a swordsman named Ardulg, reputed to be highly skilled. He hesitates, then suggests that if they are talking about someone even better than this sword, the one who comes to mind is someone else. The man reveals there is just one person he wants to know about. His father. Though it's only speculation, he insists on learning everything about him. Despite being warned not to say anything careless, he stands determined, holding the katana tightly as he seeks the truth about his father. The traveling merchant Ibuki Murasame gently refuses to rush, saying he can't provide good information in haste. He returns the katana to Sig, the swordsmith, and shifts the conversation to business. Ibuki introduces himself as a merchant from the Far East, while Sig reintroduces himself as the swordsmith. Ibuki asks Sig if he will sell his swords to him, and Sig questions if Ibuki will use them. Ibuki explains he will sell the swords Sig makes to the people of the kingdom, aiming to monopolize the market and earn a high profit. Since there is no competition locally, Sig wonders why Ibuki wants swords made by him instead of sourcing from the Far East. Ibuki explains that sourcing swords of such caliber from the Far East is difficult for a powerless traveling merchant like himself. Most skilled swordsmiths serve under the shogunate or a daimyo. That's why Ibuki has been steadily earning with Far Eastern goods but has found a skilled smith right here. He asks again if Sig will sell his swords to him. Sig reflects that Ibuki is a true merchant who must love Far Eastern culture deeply and would never mistreat his swords. He agrees to the deal, and Ibuki thanks him enthusiastically. When discussing the purchase, Ibuki offers 200 gold coins for 2 swords, which Sig acknowledges with understanding. Sig notices Ibuki isn't bargaining like most merchants do when their goods don't sell well locally. Ibuki smiles, saying lowering the price would lower Sig's value. Sig admires Ibuki's skill in winning people over and acknowledges the merchant's money, earned from Far Eastern goods. Ibuki reveals he's been back in the kingdom for 15 years after serving as an exclusive blacksmith for a guild in Rusalka. Sig expresses jealousy toward those adventurers. Ibuki orders multiple daggers, kitchen knives, scissors, and a katana, asking if Sig can deliver in 2 weeks. Sig agrees but questions if Ibuki can sell them all so fast. Ibuki confidently says making that happen is his skill, and Sig realizes worrying about a professional businessman was unnecessary. Garland arrives, greeting Sig and asking if the swords sold. Sig confirms a good encounter and that someone bought his swords. Garland asks if the buyer was the traveling merchant Ibuki, and Sig confirms. Garland explains Ibuki was so enthusiastic about Sig's dagger he repeatedly asked who made it, leading Sig to eventually tell him. Garland thanks Sig for connecting him with such a good contact. When Garland asks if Sig has any smoked goods, Sig apologizes that he sold out. Sig offers smoked cheese as thanks for the introduction to Ibuki, surprising the recipient. The vendor gratefully accepts and waves goodbye as Sig returns to his stall. A man approaches, greeting Sig as the master of the legendary smokehouse. Sig recognizes him as the street vendor and wonders if he knows the rumors about him. The vendor admits he was the one who spread those rumors, much to Sig's shock. He boasts about the booming business thanks to Sig's smoked goods and asks Sig to reserve a wholesale batch next time he visits Unbelt. Sig agrees, while the vendor happily walks away. Sig reflects on meeting a merchant who sells katanas and how the swords he made for Ibuki have sold. He prepares to sell more swords to Ibuki, realizing this will be a long partnership. The scene shifts to Ibuki, dressed in traditional attire, walking thoughtfully. He recalls the moment he unsheathed the sword and was surprised by the clear line of the blade, indicating the exceptional craftsmanship. In the Far East, a legend is passed down that a perfected blade reveals the future. The gleaming sword shines against the backdrop of a grand castle. A man steps out of a wooden doorway, quietly reflecting that he can't believe such a blade was forged by a smith from the kingdom. He contemplates the sword's legacy, a national treasure born purely from the blade's charm, lacking any recorded history. He admits he might be imagining it, but he felt a close connection to that sword. The man wields a katana with precise, powerful strikes, the blade cutting through the air. Overwhelmed, he acknowledges the terrifying talent behind the masterpiece, a creation that makes him tremble. After filing the blade, he uses a chisel to carefully engrave a Far Eastern inscription. Deciding that's a good stopping point, he steps back from the table, then relaxes outside, savoring the fresh water and reflecting on how its taste reveals the quality of the environment. Noticing his usual gear is missing, he considers it a problem but decides to make do with what he has. Drawing his sword, he prepares for any threat, alert to the possibility of a beast nearby, then heads outside with resolve. A young woman suddenly appears, greeting him warmly. She apologizes for startling him and asks about the new sword, which he admits is still a work in progress. He explains the polishing process and the assembly of the guard, collar, hilt, and scabbard, noting that the toughest parts are the most rewarding to make. She reveals she came with a request, having just taken down a large catch, and asks for help carrying it. He agrees, promising to get ready and meet her shortly. Together, they walk away through the trees, ready to face the next challenge. They examine the enormous deer, noting it must have lived about 8 years. The girl proudly shows the arrowheads she made, which delivered a clean, vital hit. He warns her not to overexert herself, and she agrees to be careful. He explains that hanging the carcass high drains the blood better, preserving flavor and freshness. Praising her knowledge, they begin skinning the animal, deciding to discard the organs since bleeding took too long. She suggests soaking the hide in the lake water, and they plan to carry it with a magic bag despite the walk. They arrive at a calm, beautiful lake, reminding them of old days spent swimming and fishing. The girl asks what's wrong as he struggles with the heavy hide. She requests his help collecting the hide again tomorrow, promising to share more meat as thanks. He agrees, surprised by the size of the thigh cut, estimating it must weigh around 10 kilos. The quality of the venison is exceptional, making it a shame not to smoke it. He offers to smoke any additional pieces while working, assuring it's not much extra effort. She asks which cut he recommends, and he thoughtfully considers the options. He explains that all cuts will be delicious smoked, but the thigh is especially good even as a whole piece. Holding up the large thigh cut, he suggests using it for smoked steaks and recommends making smoked jerky from the tenderloin. She excitedly agrees, recognizing it as the best choice. He tells her to look forward to it and prepares to start the curing process. He mixes a curing salt from salt and light brown sugar, then applies it to the heavy thigh meat. He gathers spices like paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, sugar, salt, and pepper, wrapping the thigh and tenderloin separately. The thigh will rest in its slime pack for 5 days, the tenderloin for 3. Closing the fridge, he smiles, eager to begin the work ahead. He announces it's time to remove the salt, starting by wiping off the excess. This crucial step shapes the flavor. He removes surface moisture from the meat and hangs it to absorb the smoke. Observing the meat's color, he notes how it whets the appetite. The waiting time feels luxurious, a hobby fitting for this age. The jerky is finished, sparkling with freshness. He tastes a piece, pleased the wild venison flavor remains distinct despite the smoke. He imagines pairing it with beer and whiskey later. A few days later, he proudly holds the finished smoked venison, impressed by its weight. A girl senses the smoky aroma and rushes in excitedly. He invites her to serve it to Liliana and the others, fulfilling his promise of smoked venison. The tenderloin jerky gleams invitingly as the girl eagerly agrees to try it. Tearing it along the grain, both girls savor the rich, punchy flavor, delighting in its deliciousness. The man notes they'll likely grow up to be drinkers. When asked if they've eaten lunch, they say not yet. The girl insists they also have some thigh meat, and the man invites them to eat together, smiling as the girl tugs at his apron. Inside a bright kitchen, the man and girl prepare food while a woman arrives home. Commenting on the enticing aroma, she thanks Liliana warmly for the invitation. The woman explains that Mr. Sig brought the smoked venison. Expressing gratitude, the girl tells her mother to sit down. The man admires the jerky's beautiful cross-section, noting the firm outside and moist interior, impressed by the difficulty of keeping the inside a perfect pink. The man sprinkles seasoning over the jerky, savoring the aroma that fills his empty stomach. He notes the doneness is medium rare, which maximizes the venison's juiciness. The girl prepares plates nearby, ready to serve. The table is set elegantly with plates of food and drinks, inviting everyone to sit. The group gathers around, the woman marveling at the luxurious spread and urging everyone to eat. The girl eagerly agrees, and they prepare to enjoy the meal together. The woman savors the jerky, noting its delicious, slightly gamey flavor and concentrated umami. The younger girl bites thoughtfully, acknowledging its grown-up taste. The man quietly reflects on the perfect capture of natural juices in the firm, lean deer thigh meat. The carrots, boiled carefully and coated in deer fat, enhance their sweetness. Fresh cabbage balances the richness, keeping the meat tasting fresh. The girl beams with pride, revealing she worked hard growing the vegetables. The man compliments the side dishes, appreciating the full meal. Memories of the hunt and harvest blend with the present meal, as the man reflects on how the cycle of hunting, preparing, eating, and working shapes his life. The harvested cabbage was sold, and the smoked deer meat was shared. The woman thanks him warmly for the delicious smoked meat, symbolizing how he becomes part of others' lives through his efforts. The girl insists that smoking 1 or 2 things more won't make a difference, encouraging him to tell her anytime. She hesitates, then asks what he wants smoked next. He replies, not smoked meat but arrowheads, 20 please. She asks if he has the used arrowheads, and he confirms he does, offering to remake them as material to save costs. She happily agrees and rushes off to bring them. Meanwhile, cooperative farming with the Shinshan family produces Liliana's arrowheads, while he also crafts items ordered by Ibuki and weapons for sale at the free market. Alone now, he reflects on the day of his promise with Ibuki, recalling the crop harvest and the busy workshop. Customers seeking smoked goods and weapons gather at the market, and he wonders how many will come today. At the market, he observes the bustling business with customers inspecting swords and goods. He notes that all the customers were after the smoked goods. Thinking it a swordsmith's dream come true, he accepts this quietly, content with the success. Despite having many customers, none bought a single sword. Even with his skills as a smith, he jokes about maybe becoming a smoked goods shop instead but quickly dismisses the idea. Holding a katana, he wonders if the customer disliked the work, calling it a problem. The ordered items are ready, and he prepares to show them. The customer asks why the quality of the latest sword is higher than the last one and if he was holding back before. The smith explains he can't get into his work if he doesn't know who he's selling to. Custom orders are his true strength. The customer appraises the sword and raises the price to 300 gold coins, surprising the smith. The smith admits that one sword did sell, and the buyer even took it to be colored. He recalls this quietly, a slight smile forming. The customer praises the smith's skills, saying any merchant who can't profit from such good goods should quit immediately. The smith listens, impressed by the compliment, as the customer gestures confidently, embodying the image of a cool merchant.